Today on Stretch Your Kitchen, I'm back, and today I'm taking things from patio to plot to help you stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and serve up delicious food for you and your family. Great meals don't start in the grocery store. They start in your own kitchen. I'm Erica, and I'm on a mission to prove that thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better. Welcome to Stretch Your Kitchen. It's summertime, and school is out. The sun is shining. Well, here in Oahu it is. And every sunrise brings the promise of longer days and memories to be made. Maybe for you, summertime means maybe beach getaways or days at the neighborhood swimming pool, or maybe morning walks in the woods or evening baseball games. When I was a small girl, I loved summer because every day seemed to pass a little bit more slowly with seemingly endless sunlight hours to enjoy. So many great experiences happened in the summer, like camping trips that I remember, or playing flashlight tag with my friends when I was younger, and days spent enjoying the freshest produce my community had to offer, all because of one of the most beautiful gifts that summer has to give, and that is local, farm, fresh summer vegetables found in the nearby farmers markets. I used to love going to the farmers markets. Back then, I could barely wait for the taste of freshly harvested tomatoes or Silver Queen corn. My parents would buy grocery bags full of tomatoes from the local stand, and they were so inexpensive, a fraction of what they would cost at the grocery stores at the time. We would eat tomato sandwiches for days on end. They were simple, yet delicious. I will even admit to the fact that I ate tomatoes whole, biting right into them as if they were apples. And the corn, oh my goodness, there is nothing sweeter than July corn rolled in butter and sprinkled with copious amounts of salt and pepper. My parents would boil up to 20 or 30 ears of corn at a time, and we would just feast. But at 5 or 10 cents per ear, it was very affordable and practical. Nowadays, the produce is just as delicious, but the farmers market prices are no longer the bargain that they once were. Farm stand tomatoes now average about $3 to $5 per pound. And no wonder. American farmers are really experiencing a severe economic downturn due to high operating costs like seed and fertilizer and machinery, or shrinking export markets, which are exacerbated by trade tariffs. There are also devastating losses from severe weather events and climate change. It is a lot more difficult for families to savor the flavors of farm fresh produce in mass quantities like I did when I was younger. After all, most of us are also feeling the economic pinch these days. But what if I told you that you could still experience the taste of fresh picked tomatoes or cucumbers directly off the vine? You can. And that's why today I'm taking you from patio to plot and sharing ways that you can dine on the freshest produce on a daily basis in any climate and still stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and serve up delicious food for you and your family. So let's head right into today's Kitchen Quest. The Kitchen Quest is where I tackle new topics each week to help you stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and turn what you already have on hand into delicious, flavorful meals. Today's episode is one that, for me, feels really deeply practical because today we're talking about gardening. Now, I'm not talking about picture-perfect magazine cover type gardens or 20 raised beds and a greenhouse. I'm also not talking about waking up at 5 a.m. to hand water heirloom tomatoes while birds chirp around you and land delicately on your hand as if you were a Disney princess. No, that's not practical. Today, I'm talking about real life gardening, tiny space gardening, budget friendly gardening, patio gardening, kitchen window gardening, container gardening, backyard plot gardening. There was a time when growing food wasn't considered a hobby. It was simply part of life. People kept herbs near the kitchen because fresh flavors mattered. Families planted vegetables because grocery access wasn't always guaranteed. And for many people, grocery access isn't guaranteed even today. Grandparents saved seeds because wasting food or money simply wasn't an option. But somewhere along the way, many of us stopped believing that food could come from us. We became consumers instead of producers. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not suggesting you suddenly become like a fully self-sufficient homesteader. And most of us don't live on farms with lots of acreage to do with what we wish. Maybe you live in an apartment or in a city, or perhaps you have minimal yard space. And many of us don't have the gift of lots of time on our hands. And I get it. You're busy. I'm busy. Perhaps you travel or you commute for work. And some of us might not have the experience to plant, grow, and harvest. Some of us can barely keep a houseplant alive. But here is what I am suggesting. Even a tiny amount of growing changes the way you think about food. You stop wasting herbs because you understand how much effort they took to grow. You become more creative because ingredients are right outside of your door. And you stretch meals differently because fresh flavor helps simple food feel exciting. And financially, let me tell you, the savings can be shocking. First, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how grocery store herbs are so expensive because I don't know about you, but I've had moments standing in the produce section staring at a tiny little plastic package of basil thinking, $7 for 6 leaves? Fresh herbs are one of the most overpriced ingredients in many grocery stores. And what happens? Well, you buy cilantro maybe for one recipe, use 3 sprigs, and the rest eventually liquefies in the crisper drawer 3 days later. We've all done it. But did you know that one single herb plant can produce over and over again for months or even years? Think about the math on that. One basil plant can provide enough basil for dozens of meals. Mint grows aggressively and returns constantly. Rosemary becomes almost shrub-like in most climates. You should see my rosemary plant. It has taken on a life of its own, and I am in no position to thwart its dominance. I call it Big Bertha, and honestly, it is huge. Not just rosemary, but green onions can grow repeatedly. They just continue to grow. And even parsley keeps producing when harvested correctly. When you have fresh herbs on hand, suddenly pasta tastes fresher. Eggs feel elevated. Soup feels restaurant quality. Sandwiches can taste more intentional. And leftovers feel new again because herbs stretch flavor, and flavor stretches satisfaction. Now, maybe you're listening and thinking, Erica, I don't have land. My friend, you do not need land. You need sunlight and determination. And something tells me that you already have both because you're listening to Stretch Your Kitchen. Did you know that on a small patio only, you can grow herbs and lettuce and cherry tomatoes and peppers and green onions and strawberries and even compact bush cucumbers? Yes, on a small patio. You can use pots or buckets or grow bags, railing planters or recycled containers. You can even use black garbage bags. Some of the most productive gardens I've ever seen came from tiny spaces. They're container gardens.
meaning everything is grown not in the ground, but in some type of container. And honestly, container gardening can actually reduce waste because you grow smaller amounts more intentionally, so nothing is wasted. It's pretty hard to personally use up, say, 50 cucumbers that ripen in 1 week, but 3 to 5 cucumbers per week from one small bush cucumber plant. Now that's pretty easy to use creatively in your kitchen. In a container garden, you won't be overwhelmed with 40 zucchini showing up overnight like some sort of gardening horror movie. You grow what you use. I remember talking to someone who lived in a tiny apartment with only a little balcony space. She told me, I felt silly planting herbs because it seemed too small to matter. But then she realized something. Every single time she cooked, she stepped outside and clipped basil or thyme or mint. Cooking stopped feeling rushed and meals felt more thoughtful, more alive, more personal. And that is the hidden gift of gardening. It slows you down in the best possible way. And it's not even expensive. Even here in Hawaii, I can head over to Home Depot and get an herb plant for $2.99. Yeah, just $2.99, way less than the cost of one small plastic package of herbs. I personally grow parsley and dill and thyme and rosemary and sage and oregano and Thai basil and Italian basil and cilantro. And I honestly haven't bought herbs in years, yet I always have them on hand. And it's not just because I live in a warm climate. You can grow herbs year-round. Just bring your small pots inside and place them near a window, even on the floor near a window, and you will never need to buy herbs again. They are easy to care for and the most economical way to add flavor and depth to your meals. I'm actually going to add a video to the Stretch Your Kitchen Facebook group of my herbs so you can see how one small plant that originally cost $2.99 now feeds us on the daily for years on end. I honestly recommend that everyone grow herbs. If nothing else, grow herbs. I say nothing else because perhaps by the end of this episode, you might be inspired to create your own mini garden, whether it be a patio or a plot. But one of the biggest mistakes beginner gardeners make is growing aspirational food instead of practical food. I do not recommend that you take on gardening and try to grow what sounds impressive. Grow what you use. If your family eats tacos, grow cilantro. Pasta, grow basil and oregano. If you love roasted potatoes, grow rosemary. Do you drink tea or have cocktails? I know I do. Grow mint. If you really enjoy salads, grow lettuce. Sandwiches, grow tomatoes. Your garden should support your real kitchen. Stretch Your Kitchen is never about fantasy, unrealistic cooking. It's about practical cooking that saves money and minimizes food waste. So your garden should reflect your actual food habits, your cooking habits. So yes, grow herbs. But if you happen upon lemongrass in your local nursery and have never enjoyed Thai cooking, pass it by. Grow what you will use. Now, let's talk for a minute about the versatility of homegrown herbs. Let's take basil. It's fast-growing, incredibly productive. I just had to cut half of my basil plant off because it just became enormous, and keeping up with the flowering became a little tedious. So I just lopped it in half, and it's regrowing beautifully. It is productive. It's also fragrant and very versatile. Basil is great for pasta or pizza or sandwiches or salads or homemade pesto. I've said before, I make homemade pesto quite frequently in larger batches and I keep it in my freezer. So I always have delicious homemade pesto on hand thanks to the versatility and inexpensive nature of growing basil. The only important thing to remember with basil is that you have to constantly pinch flowers off so that it keeps producing. Otherwise, it will go dry and dormant. But that just takes a few seconds a day. Let's talk about mint. Mint practically grows out of spite. Seriously, you need to contain it unless you want it taking over not only your garden, but almost your life. I grow my mint in a pot because it will take over everything, but it is perfect for tea or to have with fruit or in yogurt sauces like tatsikis or in cocktails or even just infused cucumber mint water. Rosemary is one of the best investments for flavor because a little goes a long way, but it does grow enormous, so keep that in mind. It is great in a pot because it's contained, but once you place it in the ground, it gets huge, like mine, Big Bertha. Well, rosemary is obviously perfect for like roasted potatoes or chicken or bread or marinades. Parsley, I honestly think parsley is like the most underrated herb there is because parsley can go with anything. Parsley can brighten up soups or eggs or rice or sauces or roasted vegetables, any meats. It makes simple food taste fresh. Parsley is my most utilized herb. I grow both curly parsley and Italian parsley, and I honestly can say I think I use parsley almost daily, and my plants keep producing. Let's talk about chives or green onions. Green onions and chives are fantastic for beginners because you don't need to harvest the onion at all. You just keep snipping off the top and they just regrow. They are so low maintenance and you will always have green onions on hand. They are the perfect beginner crop. So, yes, growing herbs and growing in general is an amazing way to stretch your grocery dollars. But let's talk about how it minimizes food waste. As I said a few minutes ago, the purpose of Stretch Your Kitchen is obviously to stretch your grocery dollars and minimize food waste. You all know that by now. But gardening does something fantastic psychologically. When you grow food, you value food differently. You stop throwing away half a bunch of parsley because now you know that took time and care to grow. You also become more resourceful. So herb stems can go into broth. Extra basil, just make that pesto and freeze it. Tomatoes can be used fresh or can create delicious pan pasta sauces. Excess mint becomes mint tea. Greens get blended into soups. Growing food naturally teaches respect for ingredients, and therefore you minimize the waste of those ingredients. Now, maybe at this point you're becoming maybe slightly curious or maybe even inspired. So maybe gardening becomes more than just herbs for you. You might say, I can start a tomato plant, and then maybe I could grow peppers too. Suddenly, you're researching composting at midnight and arguing emotionally about mulch. Trust me, it happens fast. Gardening is addictive. But if you do expand into a garden plot, here are a few principles. First, grow vertically when possible, especially in small spaces. All of my garden plots are raised beds. Most are 4 feet by 8 feet or 2 feet by 12 feet. But I grow so much in those smaller spaces, and that's because I try to grow vertically as much as possible. Trellises actually save space. I've added simple fencing to the back edge of each of my garden boxes so that I can grow vertically. Even traditionally non-vertically growing plants can be trained upward on a vertical trellis. This needs nothing expensive. Simple fencing along the back of your garden boxes and some simple twine. It's so easy and everything can be done economically. Now, the second thing, other than growing vertically whenever possible, the second thing is to start small because a tiny, successful garden beats a giant failed one. And third, try to succession plant. That means to plant small amounts repeatedly instead of everything at once. Trust me, you will never be able to use the tomatoes that 12 tomato plants provide. You'll just be giving it away, and that's lovely. I give some produce away as well. But the idea here is to stretch your grocery dollars for you and your family. Fourth, and this is the most important, focus on high value crops. What are some grocery store produce items that you buy frequently that cost a lot of money? If you have a smaller garden space, you grow expensive grocery items that you use. For example, herbs or tomatoes. Tomatoes have gotten expensive. Or salad greens. One small bag of salad greens is expensive, but one lettuce plant produces over and over and over. Peppers are another idea. I rarely grow carrots, and when I do plant them, I plant just a few so that I can use the greens. I don't actually ever harvest the carrots because they're so inexpensive at a grocery store. But the carrot greens I use in soups and stews. I also never grow full bulb onions or celery. Why? Because they are relatively inexpensive. They are readily available and they cost very little. So I don't want to waste my garden space on those items. I use my garden space to grow a large variety of vegetables, but nothing that I can easily buy for very little money. All of our garden space is used to my family's economic advantage. And that truly is a way to stretch your kitchen. Now, let's talk for a minute about the emotional side of growing food. I think part of why gardening matters right now is because so many of us feel disconnected. We're disconnected from the food. We're disconnected from the entire process. Well, gardening reconnects us. There is something so healing about watching life in the form of produce grow. I love walking around my garden beds in the morning, relishing in the growth, admiring plants as they produce new flowers, and harvesting food that makes its way to our dinner table. It's honestly cathartic. You water something, you tend to it, you wait patiently, and then it gives back over and over again. That is so hopeful. And in a world where grocery prices feel unpredictable and life can feel overwhelming, growing even a little bit of food reminds us we are not powerless and we are not fully at the mercy of those grocery store prices. With a little bit of time and an iota of determination, whether it's patio or plot, we can forge additional paths to stretch our grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and cook up even more delicious, fresh, healthy food. So let's dive into today's culinary concern.
The weekly culinary concern allows me the opportunity to answer your questions and share more ways to help you stretch your kitchen. If you're feeling inspired, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Visit stretchyourkitchen.com and please follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Stretch Your Kitchen for more tips, tools, and helpful takeaways to minimize waste and maximize flavor.
One question you might have is, isn't gardening expensive? And this is a valid concern because gardening can become expensive if you treat it like a shopping hobby instead of a food strategy. You do not need designer raised beds or expensive tools or fancy irrigation systems or aesthetic gardening accessories. What you need is sunlight, soil, seeds or starter plants, water, and consistency. In fact, some of the best gardeners I know use recycled buckets or yogurt containers or coffee cans or thrifted pots. So here are a few tips to really help you as you seek to save money through gardening. First, start small, as I mentioned. Second, if you can, grow from seeds. Packets generally cost $2 to $3 and yield hundreds of plants, whereas mature seedlings from a nursery cost about $3 to $4. Now, if you're starting late in the season, by all means, spend that $3 or $4 and buy the starter plants because they are already on their way to producing. Another thing you could possibly do is visit seed swaps or plant libraries. Instead of buying everything, check for free seeds or starter plants and connect with other local growers. Also, here's something that people probably don't know. You can actually grow from kitchen scraps. You can regrow green onions or celery if you wanted to, or you can actually use the lettuce bases and submerge them in a simple glass of water before transplanting them to dirt. It's called propagating, and these items create new root forms and then can be planted. No waste, no expenditure, just utilizing what you've already bought to create a new plant. Now, always use DIY containers. Skip those pricey planters. Please, if you need to start a garden on a budget, repurpose old plastic buckets, even milk jugs with the tops cut off, or wooden pallets, and just ensure that you poke holes in the bottom for drainage. There are also fabric grow bags. If you need containers, consider those non-woven fabric grow bags, which are significantly cheaper than heavy ceramic pots, and they provide great aeration for the roots. Soil can be expensive. Now, if you must buy soil for container planting, opt for budget-friendly, all-purpose topsoil or potting mix, and then incorporate a bit of compost and granulated fertilizer into the mix. Topsoil and potting soil cost approximately $3 to $6 per bag at your local gardening center. And since you're starting small, you won't need hefty amounts of soil initially. Remember, start small. Allow your garden to expand as your budget allows. So to alleviate your concern, gardening doesn't have to be expensive. And trust me, you will recoup the initial financial outlay tenfold as you reap what you have sown. Gardening is truly a way to stretch your grocery dollars. So let's head into today's Triple T takeaway.
Each week, I'll leave you with my Triple T takeaway. That's tips, tools, or tasks to begin implementing the Stretch Your Kitchen lifestyle. These simple takeaways prove that thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better.
This week, I am giving you a task. I'm calling it the one pot task. This week, choose one herb that you use often and that you have bought in the grocery store. Get one pot. It doesn't have to be a store-bought pot. Remember, think yogurt container, milk jug. Purchase one bag of soil and one starter plant of that herb that you use often and buy often. Place it somewhere sunny and watch it grow. You will use it over and over again in the weeks to come. That's it. No pressure, no perfection, just one small step toward a more intentional kitchen. Grow one thing. That's it. One thing. One basil plant or one mint plant or one pot of parsley. Because gardening is not about perfection, it's about participation. And if you grow herbs, you quickly discover something powerful. Fresh flavor changes everything. So whether you have a patio, a balcony, a backyard, a windowsill, or a full garden plot, start somewhere. One simple herb just might be the single greatest flavor investment you make in your kitchen. You do not need a perfect kitchen or a perfect garden to create something beautiful. Tiny gardens still feed people. Tiny gardens still save money. and tiny gardens matter in your efforts to stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and prepare delicious food for you and your family. That's all for this week's episode of Stretch Your Kitchen. Next week, I'm going to talk about how you can buy once and eat well as we dive into the smart guide to buying in bulk.
Thank you for listening to Stretch Your Kitchen. If you enjoyed this episode or feel that it would be useful to someone else, please leave a review on Podchaser and follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Stretch Your Kitchen. And remember, thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better.